Now that there is Matias Reyes, who came out and confessed that he did this rape by himself, now everybody thinks that, oh, these guys are innocent. What people don't realize is that they knew that there were no DNA matches when they got locked up. So they already knew that somebody was missing. It's not like this was a revelation. The only thing that was new was you having someone say, I did it alone. And that brings you to the interviews of Matias Reyes.
Was she wearing a bra?
Maybe not. I can't remember that.
Can you give me a description of her?
I'm not gonna lie to you. The most I remember about was her pants, and I can't remember exactly how long the hair was and all that. It's like I remember is putting her pants down, and I don't think I took them off.
You don't think you
I
should?
know I lifted her up, and I didn't pull my pants all the way down, and I did what I had to do, and I let her back down, and I did gently, and
Did you roll her over on her stomach at any point?
I can't remember if I did that.
How about shoes and socks? What's with them? They
It's
stay.
got, I'm assuming it's jogging sneakers.
Okay. And you did not take them off, I assume?
I don't think that I was trying to. I don't know. I definitely wasn't trying to find out, if I told you pretty or not.
Okay, so it's been some time since these things have happened. Granted, I'll give him that. But there's a lot of things that he doesn't remember. Most specifically, her hair length. He talked about running behind her and zigzagging for a long time to keep up with her and to be elusive. He did this zigzagging stuff. How did he not remember what her hair length was? While on that night in 1989, Kevin Richardson gave an accurate description of her hair length.
What did the lady jogger look like?
She was short. She had short hair.
Why were you zigzagging?
Because, sometimes, who knows if they look back or whatever, so I just, because they got outside of the road, they got trees and all that there too, you could hide whatever. But she was jogging, but she wasn't jogging that fast. And when she got around the turn, I was still jogging, walking, things like that on the road, and then I would bounce back over here, but then I would go this way, she went this way, but it would always maintain a certain distance, like timing the distance, like stopping,
Yeah.
something like that.
How big a distance are we talking about?
Maybe a room, two rooms, or maybe like two rooms, and two rooms like this.
It should be noted that they did a reenactment of this zigzagging and it didn't fare well. What you'll see is that he picks up a branch, much like he claimed to have done that night. He claims that he hit her in the back of the head with the branch, and that is how he basically caught her. He knocked her down with this branch, which doesn't seem nearly as likely as her being surrounded by a group of boys who could overpower her. She's much faster than Reyes would probably be. He also mentioned her shoes and socks, not taking off her shoes and socks. But at the crime scene, we have a picture of one of her socks. And of course, they got his semen off of one of her socks that had the insole laying there. So why does he not remember that? Mind you, I'm not trying to say that he wasn't there. Obviously, he was there. What I'm trying to say is I don't know that he was responsible for the initial attacks. And what do you mean when I say initial attacks? Well, the attacks that Corey Wise and all the rest of the Central Park Five described would be the initial attacks. Okay? Now, why do I think that Reyes wouldn't know anything about the initial attacks? Well, there's a letter here from someone named Pedro Hernandez that he was locked up with in Clinton Correctional Facility. It says I first met Reyes in 19 such and such. Okay, they were housed together in Clinton Correctional Facility. And now he's going to say how he knows about the Central Park 5 case and Patricia Meili. He said he was walking down in the park that night and he was high on PCP dust. And he heard someone screaming and he went to where the screaming was coming from. And he saw a bunch of guys and they were around the part where they're joggers and saw a woman on the ground. And he went over to where they were and asked what was going on. And one of the guys said to him, "Nothing, we're just having a little fun." So Reyes asked if he can hang out too. And the guys told him yes. So they were all raping her in, I don't know what that word is. And she was still screaming. So one of the guys keep on hitting her in the face so she can quiet down. And then Reyes also was raping her, and he saw something evil about her in her eyes, like if they were ready to come out. So he started to hit her with the rock in her. We're playing with her body and hitting her, and this was all of them. Reyes had told me, not just him, Reyes told me they were all down with the rape and him to Reyes, but that's all I knew about that case because Reyes told me all this himself from the time we were in Clinton till he left the jail and went somewhere else. So that's pretty damning if it's true that Reyes was telling people in prison that he wasn't the main actor in this case. He came later. The question is, why is nobody bringing it up today? How come nobody talks about this? So if we go back to 1989, when these boys were questioned, Corey Wise was questioned by an Officer Jonesa. And at the time, this wasn't recorded, but it is recorded in some notes. Corey Wise mentioned a kid named Rudy playing with Patricia Meili's tits. And he said that Rudy took the Walkman. He also described a fanny pack that she had the Walkman in. Okay, so why is the name Rudy significant? We don't know anybody. We don't know any Rudys. Who is Rudy? Why did he mention someone named Rudy? Well, it just so happens in the book, Your Eyes or Your Life, the true story of the Central Park Jogger rapist, written by Richard Siracusa, who was Matias Reyes' lawyer in a couple of cases prior to the Central Park case. But he mentions the name Rudy. He said that he had went to a place where Reyes worked, or a bodega. He says, I'm going to read from here. It says, I remembered interviewing Papo, the owner of the bodega where Reyes worked in 1989. As I was questioning him, one of his workers indicated that he knew Reyes and that he answered to the name of Rudy. Papo nodded in agreement. He did tell me that he was also known as Tony. Okay, so now we have a name, Rudy, mentioned by Corey Wise, that this guy remembers Reyes was known as. Now, Reyes had several aliases, it turns out. But that's not the only thing. There's also the point that no one ever mentioned that Walkman being in a fanny pack. It wasn't mentioned in any of the videos. It's not known to the news. It wasn't released anywhere except in that note from Officer Jonesa. Reyes talked about a Walkman in 2002 when he confessed. He talks about taking her headset and a fanny pack. So the question is, how did Corey Wise know about that Walkman? It's not mentioned anywhere else. Never before has it mentioned, except for in Corey Wise's testimony to Officer Jonesa. There's not mention of this Walkman. So we have to figure out, how the hell did Corey Wise know about a Walkman being in a fanny pack? And how the hell did he know somebody named Rudy? Now, if you also listen to Antron McCrae's testimony, he speaks of another Puerto Rican kid in a hoodie, but he doesn't know his name. Nobody knows who that person is. Who is that guy in the hoodie? Nobody can figure out his name. Nobody knows whose name his name is. And they were in a big group of kids when nobody knew one another. A Rudy could just show up and come up and be a part of this rape. But that's not all. The author also speaks about Reyes speaking to him about having a partner in crime during some of the crimes that he committed prior to his arrest in August of 1989. See, Reyes was also arrested in 89, but he was arrested in August while the rest of them were arrested in April. So what you have is now Reyes saying that he had this partner, and his partner's name was Steve, much like Steven Lopez, right? What it says later is the description of an associate with whom he had committed other crimes closely resembled the physical features of Steve Lopez. The description he gives is of a kid who has hair much like Steve Lopez's, like we see, but also he has this scar on the side of his face. And if you look closely at photos of Steven Lopez, he has a very similar scar to what Reyes said that this person also had.